Good morning everybody, this is Val and I've just started working on a couple of journals of my own that I've been putting off for a little while, and I thought that perhaps I could do a quick tutorial at the same time on how I make my covers. Now my covers, you'll see most of my journals turn out to be the 9" by 6", which is about 230 millimeters by 145 millimeters ish, with about a 1" spine, and it's because I use one of these large envelopes to begin with. So I take my envelope and then I cut some cardstock. I just get the 12 by 12 cardstock, something with a little bit of, weightiness to it. I'm using white today, but it could be any cardstock. Perhaps it's too colourful or too, busy for you, or, you just don't like it, to use it up in this way because you don't actually see it. So to save some time, I've actually already cut my pieces, and these are just under the 9 inches long. You'll forgive me, I'm an old person if I keep talking in inches, but it's 9 inches by just under 9 and just under 6 across. So because the envelope's even bigger than that, when I put them in, when I've assembled this, I'll have that gap in the middle for the spine. And so I cut another piece of, I sometimes have to trim that when I actually get to put it in, but that's roughly what it will be like when I have completed this. So I cut them out of one piece, 12 by 12 cardstock, and I have a tiny bit left over for scrap. So that's the next step to it. So once I've done these, assuming that they're going to, I'll just check they've got clearance to go in first, and they do. And then I just put a tiny bit of glue, if my glue will go, in the middle, just a tiny bit, and that's even tinier than I want. I think it's a bit gummed up. Anyway, that will do for this exercise, and I just slide them in there, push them right down into the corners, make sure they get all the way in, otherwise it won't fit properly. And yeah, okay, so there's that one. Okay, so that's one in. We're just going to quickly grab another lot of glue that hopefully has a bit more. I saw this trick the other day of how to stop your ink from, your glue from clogging up, but I don't always remember to do it, but apparently, there we go, that's better. So apparently then when you finish with your glue, if you just give a little, like that, with a little puff of air, it clears the nozzle. That's the theory anyway. So this one's got too much glue and the other one had not enough, but never mind. It will still work. And just make sure this one ends right at the end where you're going to, where that fold is for the flap, like so, okay? So that when you seal that down, it's right at the edge. Not quite. I don't usually have this much trouble. It's always the same when you get on film, honestly. So there, that will do nicely. Okay. So then, having done that, I stick down this end. Just a little extra glue to keep it nice. Now having done that, I then fold where those pieces of cardstock start and end. Just make sure it's square, like so. And then you've got the channel in the middle for the spine. So now I make sure that this is going to fit in the middle and still have some closure, and just a fraction out, so I'm going to trim it just a tiny fraction, just a little bit off, just to make sure it's got enough clearance that the book opens and closes properly. Let's see how we go now. Jolly good. Alright, so then I just stick that down in the middle. This is just to reinforce the spine a bit. And, if you wanted a really soft look, you don't need to do this, but a lot of my spines have stuff hanging off them and so forth and so on, so it helps to make sure it's nice and strong. Make sure it's centered and all good. My other glue wouldn't be as moving about as this one. I'll have to let that dry for a second, so I'll be right back. Okay, you'll see I've put a clip on either end of that just to hold that steady while it dries a little bit. I don't have to do that if I use the other glue, but this one's quite wet, so I did do that. So the next thing that I do is I cover that. I have this stuff. It's called Fabric Tech, I think. It's kind of like adhesive, but it's fabric on the other side. So I like to use that on the spine just to cover that, and I cut it pretty, roughly, but it doesn't matter because the edges will eventually be covered, which you'll see in a little while. Sorry, I'm not finding this. Yes, there we go. So I've cut this not to size as yet because it stretches a bit when you put it on, so I can trim it later. And just, yeah, okay. I'm sure I don't normally have this much trouble with everything, guys, but never mind. I'm doing my best. So yeah, just try and make sure you're covering that reinforcement in the spine. It's really good stuff if you can get your hands on it. I got mine from Spotlight, and I bought a lot. I've got all sorts of different colours and patterns, but for this, when it's in the side of a journal, I just like to use this plain beige linen look one. And as I said, it's fabric. It comes on a roll like this, so I've still got quite a bit of it left. Got this, and I've got the others. Some of it comes sheets as well, so I've got quite a few of the sheets. But for this exercise, that's the one I use. So there we've got the basics of the mechanical part of the cover that we're making. So the next thing I do is choose a fabric to be the cover, and I've got 3 possibilities here, but I'm also doing 2 journals at once. So I'm doing one on Australiana and I've got one on Birdsong. So I've got this fabric I could use. I've used that in the past. It comes up quite nice. Don't know if it's Birdie or Australian. And then I've got these plain 2 with just different patterns on them, and I'm kind of fancying one of these. This one's gorgeous. Look at that. That was kind of like a curtain fabric sample, but it's really beautiful. I think I'll do this one. Now I usually cut them so that they're roughly the size I'm going to need. I leave them a bit longer because occasionally, not very often these days, I'll actually make at the ends, I'll fold some over and sew that, and then make a pocket inside out of the cover fabric. I'm not going to do that with this one, so I just want it to be a little bit more to the size I want. So again, I'm a bit rough with my cutting and measuring when I'm on camera. I don't want to waste time messing about too much. So that's the next step. What's the right side here? So that's the inner. So then I just stick enough glue down to hold it in place because I'm going to sew this. That's the plan. So it's going to be like that. There's a trick to cutting off the corners that I don't ever get right. I've tried all sorts of variations and it never really works, but you don't want too much fabric on that corner. It just makes it too bulky. So I just trim some off and hope it works out okay. I didn't really profess to be an expert at this, but this is what I do, blundering along from time to time. And so then I just I cleared the nozzle of this one while I had the video paused, because it's actually the best one being fabric glue for this particular task. So I'm just going to put some on here and along the bottom and down here. I'll need a bit more than that because you've got to sort of stick it to itself as well. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So just stick it down a bit and a little bit of tension for that one. And then these come up, and I just sort of like make sure they're, no, see I still haven't cut enough off there, that's still a bit messy. You'll see what I'm saying about my lack of knowledge on those corners. I don't want it to look good, so I just then stick that to itself, and that again is where I cleared that a little too well. and then I just kind of like try and get that to hold down while it sticks. And yeah, you can see again what I'm saying. It likes to be a nice smooth corner, and I don't always get that right. This is quite a thick fabric, and it's actually a little bit bulkier even than some of the others that I've done in the past, so it might not be as successful as some of the lighter fabrics that I've worked with. That's not a smooth corner. I'm going to pause the video now and just finish these off camera, because you're getting the gist of what I'm doing here, and that's just a little bit of glue to hold my fabric in place. So this sewing's done now. You'll see I've stitched right around the outside of the journal, and I've also stitched the images I mentioned on the back, and on the front I chose to go with the large flower with the little pocket in the front for a couple of tags that actually give it a bit of interest, and I did stitch that lace across the bottom as well. The journal cover itself has actually turned out a little bit wonky along the top, so I'm not quite sure that it won't get rejected and I'll start again, but I'll continue on for the sake of this exercise. So what I would do next with this is the last step for the cover, is affix the innermost panels. Before I actually stick those down though, I work out what I'm going to use to tie it, and I've got a couple of options here. And I've lost one of them. Oh, there we go. So I've got these pieces of seam binding, which are really soft, pretty, very light coffee colour, and they look nice as the ties, but so would the lace. So I'm going to suggest that I will go with this seam binding for the moment. So what I would do, and I'm not going to go ahead only because I'm not sure this is not going to be rejected. So what I would do now is glue that piece down there like so, giving it good anchorage onto the cover with a lot of glue here, and then that panel would be well glued down over top of it like so. And of course the same on the other side, making sure that those ties line up. Just close the cover to make sure that they're pretty even before you glue the second one down, and it would be something like so. And then I could possibly put some pockets on the inside, so I might put something there like that to put some tags and ephemera in the cover, and same on the back I'd find something else. Perhaps this koala picture, which although it won't be rejected totally, it will end up in the journal, might make a nice little tuck spot in the back. So it'd be something like that. And so that's it. Now if you don't have fabric or prefer not to, you certainly could make this cover by covering the outside with cardstock and not fabric, and you don't have to sew. If you can't sew, you could just glue things down very well, and it works adequately. Most of my things are only lightly glued because I'm going to stitch them, but you could glue everything down and you wouldn't need to sew. So I hope you've enjoyed this little tutorial of mine, and they're not original ideas, probably based on somebody else's video, but I've put some of my own slant on it, and so I thought you might find it of interest. So thank you very much for looking, and have a lovely day. Bye.